Welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast.
Tracey, welcome to the Mind Chimp podcast. How are we doing?
Very well, thank Danny. How are you?
I'm wonderfully well. Obviously, other than attacking the fly, what was flying around here, that is a real struggle. But other than that, I'm all good. The sun's shining, right?
It's obviously a fly that wants to be famous.
Well, it's made it. Whether it'll make it to the end or not, I'm not sure.
The Mind Chimp fly.
Fair enough. It's famous already. So I guess before I even get into the show, I tend to ask my guests what their tagline was. So, what's the tagline? What summarizes you as a person? What would yours be?
So I know you gave me warning on this, but actually I must say it's pretty tricky because I didn't want to do anything boring because if anything, you are the opposite of boring, Danny. So I knew I'd just be letting you down. I actually went with the Curious Space Traveller, which I think for me, I've always been, since I was a child, just curious about everything. And I think Google's amazing because it means I can answer almost every question I have on the planet. Space traveling for me is just a willingness to go into like places or go to destinations that people may not have gone before. And I get really excited about kind of pioneering or kind of just experimenting with things where I don't know the answer and I don't know what the result's going to be. So that's what I'm going with. I'm going with Curious Space Traveller.
I love it. I think that perfectly sums you up, actually.
Thanks, Danny.
So what I need you to do for me first is I need you to pick 4 numbers. So this is numbers from 1 to 100, any 4 you like.
Any 4 numbers. Okay, 16.
Yep.
44.
Okay.
67 and 88.
Perfect. We shall come back to them a little bit later on down the line.
Okay.
So I guess when you was in school, Tracey, and the teacher used to say to you, Tracey, what do you want to be when you grow up? What did you used to say to the teacher?
So I thought I was going to end up in the medical profession, actually. It ranged from kind of being a doctor, but I think maybe a lot of kids want to be doctors. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. Then I wanted to be a physiotherapist. And then I actually ended up studying for a master's in psychology. So I was always just really fascinated by the human body, the brain. I just find human beings incredibly fascinating. So I kind of followed, in some ways, my childhood dream.
Okay, cool. And I guess the last final warm-up question before we get into it is I'm going to say some random words to you, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind when I say these words.
Okay. This like kind of Freud on the couch.
Yep.
Free association. Okay, go for it.
Nailed it. Okay, so the first one is culture.
People.
Okay, L&D.
Performance.
Okay. This is kind of 2 or 3 words, but Sky is L&D function.
Innovative.
Okay, and the last one is leadership.
Critical.
Okay, smooth. I like it. So I guess, for my listeners, obviously I kind of came across you, I think it was thanks to JV James, and then since then I like to think we've been friends. But
yeah,
I was thinking maybe some of my listeners don't know who you are. So maybe it could be quite handy if you could give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour, kind of from who you are and kind of where you've come from to where you are right now, I guess.
Okay, whistle-stop tour. All right. Of course, because I'm Australian, that's actually a whistle-stop tour. So I'm Australian. I came to the UK in 2008. Actually arrived on the tube on the 16th of October, and the front page of the Metro said jobless crisis worst in 16 years, and I came over unemployed. So that was not boding well. But let me backtrack a little bit. Ended up going to university. I studied psychology. I actually ended up doing my master's degree in clinical child psychology, and I specialised in obsessive compulsive disorder. And I think that actually set me up really well for working in, in organisations. And maybe that's why I ended up in leadership development. But anyway, you can make of that what you will. So I never worked a day as a clinical child psychologist. I kind of graduated, came to London the first time back in 2000, and found my way very quickly into organizational psychology, kind of culture, people, and the role that kind of at the time it was sort of more personnel that kind of HR was playing. Went back to Australia, did some work in consulting, found myself underground in diamond mines and coal mines in various countries and continents. But that was actually where I built a lot of my confidence at being able to kind of take on problems and challenges that I didn't know the answer to, because when you're in consulting, you need to kind of say yes and then work out the answer. So I did that, and at the time I was maybe 28 or 29, and I was working with leadership teams, mostly men, kind of 40 plus. And so you just have to hold your own, and you have to kind of dive in. And so I think that was one of my real kind of crucible roles in my career. And then I went in to work at a transport logistics company called Queensland Rail, and I got to work with a guy called Steve Drotter, who was kind of very sage-like, very wise, a great mentor, and I worked with him for 18 months. Never have I had more direct feedback, more critical feedback that I loved receiving than from him. And so he was also, I felt very fortunate to have worked with him. And then I came to London back in 2008, and I, at the time, it was called smartphone, really. I had to go to an internet cafe to apply for jobs. If anyone remembers that. Didn't have broadband in the home, nothing like that. And I applied for this job at this company called Sky, and Sky doesn't really exist in Australia, so I didn't know what it was. And I thought it would be a good practice run for the real job that I was going to get. And here I am, more than a decade on, at Sky.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, I learned a little bit about it there, considering I thought we was friends, but hey, what's a word, eh?
You've got to hold something back, Danny. You can't let you know everything.
So I guess, yeah, so right now you find yourself at Sky, and, you know, I think Sky was probably put on the radar with L&D folk because of the approach of, you know, let's just call it what it is, agile, the agile approach. I think you potentially brought that into an L&D function space anyway.
Yeah.
But how?
It was actually 3 years ago, in next month.
Which is
it's
crazy.
It's been 3 years. Yeah. What a journey.
I think just before we even get into that, I think it's crazy because most companies are still discovering this now and are like, oh my God, this is a holy grail. And you're kind of, you know, you're 3 years ahead in that respect. So where did this come about? How did that even come around?
I am, and it's not the Holy Grail, but I'm sure we'll cover that in this interview. Where did it come around? Because we had 4 like really obvious problems, and I think this is the thing that whenever I speak to people, and lots of people come to visit me at Sky, and I get the opportunity to speak outside of Sky, and a lot of people are kind of caught by the word agile, and I try to spend quite a bit of time just bringing their attention back to what is the problem you're trying to solve. Because if you don't know the answer, if you don't know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, then how do you know that agile is the answer? And so I'm really not worried, but I kind of feel that if people haven't taken the time to understand what those problems are and they go after agile, that they'll just be disappointed, or it'll just feel like a big failure. And for us, it's actually been a really big success. And I think one of those reasons is because we were really clear that we had these problems to solve. One was we were really working in silos, and L&D is a classic silo. And I had silos within the silo of L&D. like individual people responsible for individual things within L&D, which was a silo within another, like a center of expertise within HR, which was within the silo of HR. So it's just like, how can you ever, make a massive difference to the people in your company if a single individual is kind of trying to serve them? I had the second one was around waste. I have this real obsession. It's very lean, like actually, rather than agile. But this thing around L&D, and I'm so guilty of this. I've been brilliant at this, where you just create these amazing programs that are full of so much good stuff. It's just filled to the brim with shiny, bright things. Whether it be 2 days, 5 days, 2 weeks. And you feel so proud of this thing that you've created. But the somewhat disappointing thing or realization can be when you talk to people 6 months after they've had that experience, and they can remember, a 2-hour morning session, or they say that out of all of that you gave to them, the one thing that really made a difference was this small thing. Or the thing that most L&D people can relate to, which is where you get to the end of a program, maybe it's run for a whole 12 months, and you go, what's been the best thing you've got from this program? And they go, the network. And you think, oh my God, like all of that effort into that amazing design, all of those external speakers, and the best thing was giving you time to spend with people who are already working with you and freely available. So waste is something that I'm really obsessed about. Another one is opinions. So a lot of L&D people can relate to this idea that you become an order taker if you're not careful, that a lot of people are quasi-experts in L&D. They come to you with the solution, not the problem. And so this battle of the opinion is something that I'd kind of really noted and wanted to kind of solve for. And the last one is pace. We are no longer in a world where you have the luxury of taking 3 months, let alone 6 months or 12 months to design anything for the business. So those were the 4 problems that we had. Then we naturally thought, like a lot of people, digital must be the answer to everything. And we quickly went past digital, where you then get to agile as the kind of key enabler of great digital solutions. And we were then much more interested in agile.
Okay, so I think there's quite a bit to pick apart there. So so obviously, when we talk about making constant iterations and stuff like that, I'm assuming there's been a lot of learning curves where you've been either, bringing this in and then actually kind of owning it and seeing where some of the trip ups and choke points are. Would you say that's been kind of your experience? Have you seen kind of the failures of where agile is and yeah, like what's been your biggest learning when trying to bring that in? Well, when you did bring that in.
Oh, but there's been loads, Danny. Loads. I think, if you're anyone that's ever either had the experience of or is thinking of doing something radically different to what you're doing now, you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to make mistakes, and you have to be a big enough person to go, that was a mistake, wrong decision, let's pivot, try something else. And you have to be like, you're leading the team, you have to be the person that takes responsibility for the decision, and give them the space to then learn about what they would do differently. And I think that is something I've definitely found the last 3 years have been a really critical leadership experience. So I've had great job experiences in the past where I've learned a lot or learned from other people, but this one has been how to lead people through change, and how not to lead people through change, how to get it wrong. We have, on one occasion, we spent 4 weeks doing a back-to-back sprint on a graduate development product, which was already double than what we would normally spend. And at the end of it, we came out with nothing. And that's our kind of lowest point that we've ever been at as a team, because 4 weeks in agile is a long time, and to come out with nothing is really, that's the biggest form of failure that you can have. And the reason we came out with nothing is because we lost track of who we were in service of, and what problem we were trying to solve, what pain point we were trying to to make better. And we got caught up in our kind of L&D designs and in our own heads. And that was my fault, right? That it's all about having a clear goal. It's about making sure that the team have that clarity. And on that occasion, I didn't give them that clarity. To give someone a Jabra speaker. There you go. Thank you.
So I guess kind of, thinking about how, kind of staying aligned to the, the problem, what you're trying to fix. So looking at from when you brought it into kind of where you are now, how much has that process changed? Kind of, are you still applying it kind of in a very, not vanilla, what's the word I'm looking for? This very kind of purist way, or have you kind of tweaked to work within the business of Sky?
Yeah, no, we've massively I mean, if I wind back the clock to 3 years ago, we didn't know what we were doing. We had spoken to some of our IT colleagues who, by the way, were so helpful and totally willing for us to basically observe them and have them come in and help us. So they became our biggest allies. But we had a team at the time, a team of 8, and we just started sprinting. And with no idea of what we were going to do week to week, sprint to sprint. And now if you fast forward, we use a lot of visual management. So we put a lot of our kind of vision and our missions on a whiteboard for everybody to see. It's about as much transparency as we can give, not just to ourselves, to our wider team, but also anyone. Just before this call with you, I was taking one of my colleagues who comes from the digital team through our vision board, through our kind of work plan, and it's just all there for people to see. And that's a really key ingredient of success. It means that we can then release plan more easily. Our backlog is visible for everybody. We have a classic kind of Kanban to do, doing, done board that again is fully visible. And we meet kind of regularly each week. We're doing planning meetings as a leadership team to look at our portfolio of work, making sure that the squads, because I've got multiple squads of people, are focusing on the work that can add the most value. And it feels like a much more planful, thoughtful, focused on the end user, data-driven, collaborative effort than it was from where we started 3 years ago. But that has been 3 years of learning.
Wow. I think it sounds really cool on the fact of just accountability as well as a function. There's no hiding, right? I guess when it's all up in the open for everyone to see. I really like that approach, actually, thinking about it. I mean, I think personally we could probably talk about just this agile journey in general for longer than, a good podcast all by itself. But I guess talking about the tools, what you used, and I guess I made an assumption actually recently on Friday that everybody knew what Kanban was, and that when they're talking about
no, they don't.
and talking about Trello and stuff, and how to do it easier and actually free, and I had so many heads who were like, what's Kanban?
What's Kanban?
Yeah.
What's Scrum?
Yeah. I mean, do you fancy giving it a whistle-stop tour of what Kanban is and the tools what you used, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So I would even go so far as to say, what is Agile, if I can even go back to that stage, because when I was talking to people a couple of years ago, particularly people in HR, Agile also meant things like flexible working, and meant kind of efficiency workflows. It was Agile with a little a. And I used to have to kind of clarify up front that I'm kind of talking about Agile, the noun, which obviously was born in sort of software development back in, I think it was 1989. And that within that, you then have many kind of methods or philosophies that bring Agile to life. And Scrum is one of them. It's probably the most common one. It's one that is much more structured. The rules are very clear. The roles are very clear. It's all about time box sprints. It's about release backlogs. It's about planning, stand-ups, retrospectives, showcases. There's a really like rich kind of science behind it. And from a psychology perspective, I find Scrum really fascinating because I really think it's built on a lot of an understanding of high performing teams. If you look beneath the bonnet of Scrum, you really do see how to create a high performing team. But Kanban is another sort of version of Agile, but it's to do with workflow. And actually you have a kind of to do, a doing and a done. The team decides kind of what they're moving in from and to in those columns, and they put sort of certain limits in place. So you may not be able to have more than 2 or 3 things in doing, to get people really focused and not multitasking. And also if one of those things isn't moving because it's blocked for a reason, then you've got to get everyone focused on why it's blocked. And so Kanban is a bit more flexible, really good for kind of mature teams that kind of know what they're doing. And in fact, you can use Kanban yourself. It's a great way to kind of plan a wedding or a birthday party or anything like that. But it's definitely more of a workflow method.
Yeah, I agree. So I use Kanban to manage my workload personally. Just because, simple as like what you mentioned there, I put the limitations above the list, so to speak, and I know that it kind of it keeps me accountable and it keeps things moving. I guess there's no stalling, there's no choke points.
Well, it just also makes it visible, right? I think the big thing that tools like Trello do, and if you're working inside a corporate, you probably have Office 365, and there is a much less sexier version called Planner. But it is functionally the same, and it's about putting all the work visibly on the board, ordering it, prioritizing it, and then moving it through to get it to done. And your goal is to get stuff to done. So I mean, I use it. I'm studying at the moment externally, and I use Trello as a student to kind of know what's due when, where am I at, what do I need to do. So it is a really good visual management tool.
So how have you? Because obviously from discussions and obviously the stalking what I do on you, how do you apply this when the team's kind of remote? So I guess. I mean, I might be making an assumption, so do tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming some of your team are remote workers and they're dotted all over the show. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, 20% of my team are not based in Sky HQ, which is in Osterley in London. I've got 20% of my team that are mostly based in Scotland, but then not even in the same kind of office location. And the big thing that makes that possible is technology. So we started off back in the day using Slack and Trello, and then quickly came up against the IT firewall and data protection and all of that good stuff. And we just decided not to complain about it and go, look, we've got Office 365. It's available for free. It's not as sexy, but it's totally functional. And it means that we can connect people together, use the chat, move tasks, have video, pretty good quality video calls, certainly much better than Skype. And my team spend, they're very, very fluent and skilled at video calls. So you'll see my team on video calls a lot.
Cool. So I think I'm glad we've got the Agile thing out of the way, because I think you guys are doing way more than just Agile. And I want to get into that a little bit, but I want my guys to know a little bit about you, I guess, Tracey. So I think, take these questions wherever you like. If you want to jump in deep with them, feel free. But if you want to keep them light touch, that's fine as well. When we go for jobs and, we apply for kind of the next role, what you want, we're always kind of told in the back of our minds, show the best self and talk about how all the great things you did in life and in your professional life. But I think one of the best questions probably to ask is, actually, if I was to ask you to create your failure CV or resume, what would yours look like? What's the one thing what jumps out to you if you was to create your failure resume? What's one thing what was a failure? Maybe it was a failure instantly, and then later on down the line it became a really good positive. But yeah, what jumps out to you?
There's probably quite a few things. I think I'm definitely not someone that sees failure as a negative. Maybe that's it's a psychology thing. Maybe it's an L&D thing. But if life has gone really smoothly and everything's gone to plan, then either you haven't really pushed yourself hard enough, or you've really just been operating in a bubble. Because obviously the best learning experiences are those that in some respects might be quite traumatic, or really regretful. I mean, one really easy one that comes to mind is when I was working with Steve Drotter. I worked with him for 18 months, and I could have worked with him for longer, but I chose to come to London at that point in time. And I regret actually not finding a way to spend more time learning from him. I think I could have been probably a better person as well as a better HR professional if I had done that. I've got learnings where I've been a bit gung-ho and a bit kind of just, one of my nicknames is the Trace train, which is where, I kind of just get an idea in my mind and I believe in it passionately and I set my engines on it, and anything or anyone who gets in the way just gets wiped out. And there have been times where I've let that part of me kind of take off, and it almost inevitably ends in some form of carnage. I've like blown up bridges in terms of relationships and kind of had to repair them, and I'm not always right. I think the thing that I've learned in my many years on this planet is that it is better. There's a real cliche of if you want to get something fast, do it yourself. But if you want to do it well, do it with others, or a version like that. And I've definitely learnt the hard way to take people with you, listen, try to prove yourself wrong, be much more open to different perspectives. So that's something I've really taken with me, and I'm sure my many managers would attest to that as good learning, good development. And the fact is, I don't work in the NHS, right? So I've never killed anybody. Nobody's ever died because of the work that I do. And there are some people out there who are doing life and death jobs. So I always also try not to take myself too seriously. We are not the NHS. I am not a doctor or a firefighter. I'm an HR professional who wants to help people have a better experience of work. So just remember that's a great opportunity and it's a privilege to have that kind of job, but don't forget that people have much more important jobs to do. So I try to keep a bit of perspective. Actually, I think a little bit of humility goes a very, very, very long way.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree. So what's the one thing what not many people know about you? What's a quirk what you have, or maybe I don't know, maybe on the side you have some weird hobby, or I don't know. What's the one thing what not many people know about you?
I can say the alphabet backwards in less than 5 seconds. That's something. It's a good party trick.
Right.
I can demonstrate that for you if you like, Danny.
Go for it.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Ready? Are you ready?
Yep.
You ready? Okay. ZYXWVETSIQPONMLKJIHGFEDCBA.
Wow.
It might have actually been less than 3 seconds. Because why develop other skills when you can obviously save the world?
Wow, I'm impressed.
One of the things that most people don't know about me, it's not particularly quirky, but it's one of those. So when I was back in high school, they still had a subject called secretarial studies. Can you believe it? And my mum insisted that I do this subject, and was basically learning to touch type. And if you can kind of picture a room full of typewriters, we were all in there 3 or 4 times a week learning A, S, D, F, semicolon, LKJ, and all the things that went through. And I cursed my mom many times, but I basically did it for 4 years. And as a result, I can actually touch type very fast. And my first job in London back in 2000, I came over, really no qualifications, because remember I had a master's degree in clinical child psychology, specializing in obsessive compulsive disorder, and I didn't want to work anywhere near it. So I went for some office jobs. I thought I would just kind of, get whatever. And I walked into this recruitment agency on Oxford Street. I walked in and they looked at my CV and they gave me one of those looks where they, you could just see they were dismissing you. And they sent me into this other room to do a typing test and a like Microsoft like Word, Excel kind of test. And of course, I absolutely nailed it. And the next day I was earning, I think, twice the hourly rate that I had expected to kind of earn, because the pace at which I could type, they could charge me out at these really high rates. So I had to, at that point, thank my mum for cursing me with 4 years of secretarial studies at work. At the school. Thanks, Mum.
See, it's a given. It's a given. Parents always know best. It's just how it is.
She has been proven right on many, many things, but let's not go too much into that in case she listens to this.
Fair enough. So if I was to ask you, if you was to give a gift of a book to 5 people, and this book could be maybe something what's kind of changed your perception on things, or let's even go deeper and changed your life, but you wanted to give this book to 5 people and they had to read it, what book would you give them?
One of the books that was a game changer. It was a couple, actually. One book is The Alchemist by Paul Coelho, which is written like a kind of parable. Don't know if you've read it. There'll probably be many people that have. And it's a parable about people basically making choices in their life and taking responsibility for the consequences, and then realizing that they can choose, make a different choice if they want to. And I read that when I was about 25. And as a result, I made a lot of big changes in my life. I quit my job. I ended my relationship at the time. And kind of embarked on a really different path. So that one was quite significant for me. I've always aspired to be someone who speaks the truth, even if it's difficult. I'm probably 50-50 on that still. It feels like it's a lifelong mission. But Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott was really pivotal for me for that. And it's quite American, but she just has a way of describing it. And I think there's another more recent one called, is it Real Conversations? Anyway, that is something, having a high degree of care for the person you're speaking to, but at the same time a high degree of truth, is something that I think the world could do more with. And obviously the one that changed my life 3 years ago was Scrum by Jeff Sutherland. So that just made me completely change the way that I saw work and team. And that was where we started our journey 3 years ago.
Cool. I think it was in that book. Is that the one where he uses a case study of the FBI? Is that?
Yes.
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 That story was crazy. So yeah, I don't want to spoil that though, because people should go out and read it, right?
You'll just have to read it, folks.
So I guess if I want to kind of take you back a little bit, back to your childhood, and yeah, can you remember? And I say childhood, maybe it isn't your childhood, but can you remember the first time you ever got in trouble?
Oh, well, there are 2 instances that immediately come to mind. One is where, despite, I must have been 5, and despite my best friend Gemma, and we are still best friends, we've kind of known each other as long as we've both been on the planet. We had been told repeatedly not to ride our bikes around the block, but I led a rebellion, and we rode around the block. And my mum wasn't home at the time, so I never found out, but Gemma got properly busted. So I got busted as a result of that. So that was quite memorable. And Gemma still talks about that, by the way, still talks about how I got her first telling off, but she was such a good child. there's another one where I can still remember finding a razor blade in the bin and deciding I would shave my legs when I was 7 and managed to massacre my shins. And anyone who shaved their legs will know that is hideous. And then I lied about it and said I just scratched myself, and then I got in trouble for that as well. So it started at a very early age, Danny, just generally not following the rules. But I was actually I loved school. I loved learning. I found school was a real delight for me. My undergraduate degree at uni are probably some of the happiest years of my life. I love learning things I don't know.
Cool. I think the rebel in you is definitely something. It's interesting. I think it's something what you kind of born with, this crazy, let's just see how much we can bend these rules and get away with. And
yeah. I mean, I'm not Elon Musk, like, don't get me wrong, but but I wouldn't consider myself very compliant very often.
And that's good. That's better. Good stuff happens, definitely. So if I was to ask you to explain to a 5-year-old what it is you do, how would you do that?
So there are different ways I can answer that question, but I tend to say to 5-year-olds, I'm like a teacher for grown-ups. That is the simplest way that I can describe my job. And most kids can then picture, in a classroom with their favorite with their favorite teacher, helping them to learn. So that is my usual answer to the very young kids.
Cool. I think that's a great wrap up, definitely. So I guess kind of going into learning then a little bit more, and obviously you're kind of ahead of a curve. I think, I personally think you're ahead of a curve in what you're doing and stuff. But kind of, maybe you could share what you're up to right now. What's the stuff you're looking at right now as a function? I guess there's a couple of questions where I'm probably going to branch off with that, but yeah, let's start with that one.
So at the moment, so my role at Sky has kind of just evolved. The title is Director of People Experience, which has a great acronym, the DOPE. Which I quite like. And that is, I think, demonstrating what Sky is kind of seeing for the future of employee experience, which is how do we stop or continue to stop producing single things that solve single problems for single groups of people, and how do we start to think about the employee journey, as an experience, and you can almost then map segments of employees in different locations who are at different points in their career along different experience journey maps. And where are the pain points? Where do we really want to be famous for delighting people? You can't do it for everything. So what are the things that you really want to be brilliantly brilliant at in terms of people just feeling, and the key word is feeling, feeling like that experience that they had at Sky when they worked there or while they're working there was just the most amazing thing that they ever had. And so that's kind of I'm just at the beginning of that, like being able to kind of piece together the different parts of the employee experience at Sky, and then looking to start to choose or prioritize what are those things that we want to be brilliant at.
Cool. I think it's vital, this thing of kind of focusing on experience first now, because I mean, if you was to, let's just call this cycle a line, if you used to flatten that employee cycle out, it's just a consistent flow of experiences, some negative, some positive, and you're right, you can't have these peak moments without real low dips. Peaks can't exist without dips in moments, and it's about kind of bringing them dips up so they don't feel as kind of negative, but actually pulling out, I think I did a post recently and I was saying about, it's like a bit like an ECG, and you have to go, right, where's these moments what can turn to real high peaks in that experience. So it's interesting to kind of understand. It's interesting to know about that's kind of the approach Sky's going, kind of this experience first. So I guess I mean, it's kudos to you, right, as well.
Hey, sorry we interrupted your podcast, but we just wanted to let you know about Vendorly, where finding learning has developed. At Vendorly, we understand the pain points of looking for reliable vendors and securing new clients. We've created a platform to help you with this, save you time, and help you flourish. We want you to be the first to see it, so head over to vendorly.co.uk and take a peek. That's Vendorly with a double N.
The fact that your role's constantly developing, and obviously Sky obviously realise they've got a bit of a unicorn with you as well, which is always a good thing.
Steady on, Danny. Steady on.
I think it's
but
fair.
I think the thing that I've really kind of dived into this last year is, human-centered design and design thinking. So if anybody's listening and those phrases are not familiar to them, then I would recommend you rapidly go and Google and kind of find out a bit more. IDEO kind of leads the way on this. They've been, the D School at Stanford, but it's becoming more and more just a bit like Agile. Agile's been around for 20 plus years. Design thinking has been around for longer, but people are just discovering them now, and that's fine, right? Because it's the right time for these kind of approaches, these philosophies, and the methods that go with them to kind of emerge right now, because technology and HR are blending rapidly. And so I think if we as kind of HR professionals, or that's, for the group that I kind of identify with, if we're not thinking about that kind of merging where technology and HR are becoming more seamless for people, then we're going to miss the opportunity to kind of almost create a new function, which for me is kind of people experience or employee experience. So we're kind of embracing the fear, like feel the fear of technology and do it anyway. But actually, for me, design thinking and human-centered design are ways for people to, I guess, face the fear and know what to do about it, because they give some really game-changing kind of ways of thinking, ways of approaching how you solve problems differently when your priority is the employee experience. So I'm a big believer in both design thinking for problem finding and agile for problem solving.
Nice, I like that. I think a couple of things which I'm kind of looking at the moment is not design thinking anymore. I'm kind of looking at this design as thinking, and I think they're two very separate things, especially when I look at the clients what I've been working with at the moment, because I think a lot of people we see it all the time, right? This term gets watered down because it doesn't really get applied as a rigor as what it's meant to have. So then I think what a lot of clients come out with is ideation sessions more than anything. I'm like,
brainstorming.
You've kind of missed the trick there.
I agree. I agree. I mean, I can't stress the simplest value you can get from actually talking with individual employees. Now, I mean, people might go, oh, that's ridiculous. I work for a company that has, 5,000, 25,000, 125,000 employees. But if you're really smart about it, then you need to speak to a very small number of employees, provided you've either chosen them because they're an extreme group, they're very, very, very unhappy, or very, very, very happy, or they're in particular roles or tenures or whatever it is that you think will kind of tease that out. And what you find is after you've spoken to maybe 5 or 6 or 7 people, themes start to emerge. It's really understanding what those themes are that give you such rich insight. And so I think people go straight to ideation, but actually ideation is almost the last step. You've really got to, it's about like really truly understanding the problem, understanding the pain. What is it that people are finding frustrating, or what is delighting them? And it's actually those extreme emotion, like you've got to almost go, what's the most extreme emotional word that I could use to describe this experience? And I'm going to go and find people that would use those words to describe this experience. I'm going to talk to them. And then what they tell you is incredible, and you would have designed completely the wrong solution if you had come at it from an HR-centered perspective rather than a human-centered perspective. And so I'm just, again, a massive convert to spending more time understanding the problem than on producing a solution that might be wasted.
Exactly. I think if you don't care about the people's problems at the start, they're not going to care about your solution at the end.
Well said. Well said. Well said.
And I think it's interesting, right? Without kind of going too much into this, I guess the empathy piece right at the start of if you're applying kind of this design thinking is vital. And I remember once I was with a client and they made this giant assumption that this is everything what the business wanted. So naturally I was like, right, well, let me reach out to your audience. Let me sit in with them. Let me interview them. Let me watch what they're doing. Usual fly on the wall, interviewing, kind of shadowing. And actually it was a complete opposite. And when you sat down with him, he said, actually, what is your pain point? It couldn't be any further away from where the business thought it was. And it comes down to that thing of if you do empathy right at the start, right, it's a massive saving for the business as well. You might not feel it at the start, but it really is at the end.
Yeah, and actually the thing that so remember, I mentioned about how one of the reasons or like the problems, and it was our pain point, it was my pain point, was this thing about opinions. You know, everyone wants to be a kind of quasi L&D expert or a quasi HR professional, and you know, you've got all the hippos, the highly paid people's opinions, and the way that I have found not to beat them, like it's not like I'm trying to prove myself to be right or prove them wrong, but the way to actually have a really sensible conversation with people who at the end of the day are very busy but also genuinely usually want to make a difference and want to make things better, is to give them data. You know, and the data can come from interviews, the data can come from your kind of HR systems, but if you kind of sit down with them and go, this is the data that we've got, this is what people are telling us. We spoke to my team recently, just we're looking at career, what that means to people, what are the pain points, and I spoke to 25 people. And the richness from that, the data that comes out of that, the conversations I can then have with senior leaders, it's a game changer. It's a complete game changer, because you're no longer my opinion versus your opinion, your seniority versus my seniority. It's, let me tell you the story about what people told us. Let me share with you the themes and the insight that we gathered from talking to people. And now you're actually having a conversation about that. And it's a much richer conversation to have.
Nicely put. So I guess kind of when we look at L&D and kind of stepping out of kind of your org at the moment, Tracey, but as a whole, what do you think? And you know, we've already mentioned is L&D is full of people with opinions, and I think that can be good and bad at sometimes and whatever else. But what do you think L&D's problem is right now as a whole, as an industry? Or do you even think it's got a problem? That's, you know, without waiting a question.
Oh, yeah, yes, I do think L&D has a problem. I think in part it is not entirely theirs, but they definitely have a role to play in kind of fixing it. I think there has been a lot, like decades of training being seen as the answer to everything. And the business seeing L&D as the order taker for training requirements, and L&D filling its role by responding to that. And then it became virtual training and e-training, and there are all different types of training. But I think the role of L&D needs to move beyond training in all of its guises. And that's hard to do if you've built an entire career on designing or delivering training. The thing that the other problem that I think L&D has is it hasn't been rigorous enough on data, and happy sheets and attendance sheets are not data. And that, what we've been talking about here is more data. What is the problem? I'm going to help you really understand the problem, and I'm going to bring you back information that is going to surprise you. And we're going to have a very different type of conversation, and you're going to see me as adding value in a way that you've never seen before. So it's had a real problem with not having the data to show that there is either a better way, or that the problem they think they're trying to solve is actually not the problem. And I think there's also just not enough employee-centeredness, too much kind of HR-centeredness. What's the latest HR or L&D tool or solution? What's in my world, in my universe, that excites me, and therefore that I want to actually impose on everybody else? And I think they'll absolutely love it. And actually, what you realize is people are super busy, completely overwhelmed, and another system or another way of doing something is actually more of a burden than it is a kind of a saving grace. So those would be my three.
Yeah, I think that third one's really important, actually. Recently I did a talk, and I was talking about actually your tech, if not, a lot of times we kind of bring this legacy system with us, and the fact that we have these two different mindsets, right? We have our personal tech experience and then our work tech experience, and it's just crazy that them two are still two separate things. And then a prime example is today, kind of the expenses system what I use for my my days. I can't even tell you. It's like I lost like 2 hours of my life. And I'm like, how is this so hard? But it is.
I know, but it's actually, but I think in part because productivity, human productivity, which in some respects is from the human perspective, please don't make me do something that is so painful. When I know that on my phone I could have done something similar using this app and got the same result. That kind of almost like dissonance, of why is it so hard at work when I know that it can be so easy as soon as I leave. I think that's where employee experience is going, where employee experience is not about HR. It's not the employee experience is not owned by HR. It's owned by technology, by finance, by internal comms, by property or facilities management, by HR. And I think what I would like to see in the future is that there is a kind of joining up of those functions rather than them being kind of siloed under completely different legacy functions in a business.
Hell yes. That is fundamentally what should happen.
Hell yes, hashtag.
It's really interesting. I think this employee experience, I think a lot of people kind of see that as being this static thing. And actually it ebbs and flows with a business, right? And how the org moves. That's how the experience should move. It's not a static thing and people have to fit within that square box. It's adaptable, it moves and it changes depending on the interactions of that actor within that experience. But I think, recently I kind of put a post out there saying what I think the future of these teams should be, and I found it really interesting. Not necessarily the comments what I got back because there weren't many, but it was interesting on how many people looked at that and engaged with it, but then didn't comment on it. And it was interesting to see how many people kind of sat on the fence with that. And I think that's where people like you are really, really useful to our industry, because like you say, you'll go with something and you'll try it, you'll fail, or you'll try and succeed. And I think the problem is the people who sit on the fence with it, and it's a stall or a bottleneck maybe.
Well, I think also it's the getting started. I think it can feel quite overwhelming if you're already doing a full-time job and that's already full, and then you really want to try something different. You really want to try something experimental. But the effort that it would take to actually convince enough people that it's worth giving it a go, I think a lot of people just go, "Oh, I'm done." Like I've got too much to do anyway. And so I'd love to find a way that, for me, if you're in L&D, then that idea of what have you learnt in the really stretched yourself on and learnt in the last year, and felt like you've developed as a result of, what we're talking about here could be one of those things. And if I haven't done something like that in the last year, then I've just got another year of the same experience, right? And I think for me, I was in a fortunate position where I had the opportunity to do something quite radical, and kind of jumped at the opportunity. But I can see, when I talk to people and I talk about what we've done, I can see them generally going, wow, I want to do that. That to me sounds more sensible than what I'm doing now. But then you go back to your workplace where all the systems and the routines and the symbols are the same, and working out how you're going to break that, I think is just quite overwhelming for people. So I'm not quite sure what is going to be the pivot point for our industry, when we'll look back and go, can you believe we used to do it, like XYZ, and the way that design thinking and human-centered design and agile just is completely normal, like it is today in kind of tech, in the land of tech, and also the way that social media is now much more central to marketing than it was 10 years ago. Where are we going to kind of make that switch from the way that we've always done, for example, L&D, into the new way?
Cool. So I'm glad you brought up social media, because this is a very nice subtle move over to my next question.
Segue gift.
Yeah. It's like we planned that there. It's amazing. So obviously social media. For anyone who doesn't know, I think Sky have a good Medium site where you've kind of logged everything about Agile and stuff, and anyone who hasn't seen that I highly recommend you go and read that. But this is more about social media as a presence. And I guess, first of all, do you see social media as a net positive or a net negative to society?
I think mostly it leans towards net positive, but it feels like at any moment it could tip the other way. I think there's at the moment enough kind of sensible people in the world who use social media for, I guess, the reason it was created, which is to connect and share, and do that in a way that mostly looks to make the world a better place. But there is, of course, like any part of the world, people that misuse it and abuse it. And unfortunately, it's so new to us as human beings that we don't yet know what it's doing, or how to not control it, but just how to help shape it be more of a force for good.
Okay. So same question in a way. What's your take on L&D's presence on social media?
I wouldn't say I normally associate L&D with a presence on social media. There are the obvious people that are in my circle who I know about, like podcasts like yourself, David James, Nick Shackleton-Jones, people who are kind of banging the drum around helping people realize that there is, I guess, different choices for people to make if they want to. But I don't feel that L&D is really loud and proud on social media.
Okay, that's nice. So I want to get a little bit about you, and this is quite a deep question, so take this wherever you want to go, Trace, with it. But we talk about social media and kind of the impacts of positive and negative it can have on society and on people individually. But kind of applying this to, do you even like yourself?
Do I even like myself? On the whole, yes. I definitely have moments where I am probably my harshest critic. I take it really to heart. If my team, I have a team of 30 people now, across the whole kind of people experience landscape at Sky, and they're not backwards coming forwards. I'd like to create an environment where they can give me feedback. That's how, I do still hear stuff where I've said something or I've done something and been completely clueless about the impact it was having, and then they give you that feedback, and I feel that really quite personally. I look at other people. I try not to, but I definitely look at other people and see the things that they are really awesome at that I'm not yet awesome at, and I definitely allow myself to wallow in sort of wishful thinking. And then there are days where I'm just a terrible parent, and I know it, and I give myself a kind of good slap. But I mean, I just think life's too short to spend too much time not enjoying it, right? And being too critical or too unhappy or any of the things that just rob you of just happy time. It's just, I lost my dad 14 years ago, and he was too young, and so but his gift from that point on has been just, life is precious, make the most of it. And so I spend most of my time just focusing on the future and doing the best I can, and I really can't ask much more than myself of that.
Beautiful put. I think your mindset is perfect for that. It's easy, right? I guess, to kind of, like you say, to kind of be trapped in your own mind and kind of look at all the things, the negative or the things what you might not be good at yet. And I think, it was nice to put that, Tracey. So I guess, kind of coming out of that, and then I want to see where your head is with this one. So let's imagine you've got a billboard, and opposite this billboard,
how big? Like Sky big?
Yeah.
Sky billboard. Okay, yep.
Yeah, let's go with that one. And opposite said billboard, there's arena full of 1 million people, and 1 million people is going to leave this stadium or arena, and they're going to see your billboard. What message would you put on there to shape 1 million people's minds?
Oh my goodness, Danny.
P.S. I use that in an interview question, by the way.
Do you? I mean, it would obviously have to be listen to MindChimp, right?
Smooth.
That would if I just have to promote your podcast, and then people would obviously have a completely different experience of the world. That is hard. I would be struggling to give a really specific answer, but I do love anything that kind of highlights choice to people. There's a what, this is a really naff example, but I used to love traveling, going to Heathrow, because I thought HSBC used to do these really great ads where they would, pick a word like attitude or pick a word like success, and then they would have 3 photos that represented what that word could mean to 3 completely different people. And I thought they did a really good job of just reminding people that success, in London is completely different to success in perhaps a poorer country in the world, and just giving perspective. So I think I'd be going for something really powerful, that just showed people that almost everything that they think and everything that they choose is down to their perspective on the world. Change your perspective, change the world.
Nice. It's a good
Hashtag MindChimp podcast.
I'll
listen today.
Yeah, exactly. I'll pass you that money over later on, Tracey. Thanks for that. Definitely.
No worries.
So
invoices in the mail.
So I guess kind of for anyone listening, let's do these two. So I guess for anyone who's listening, who's the 5 people, and maybe it's people who are new, up and comers, people who you respect, but who's the 5 people you recommend everybody should follow when coming into, let's call it a people experience, because I like that term, and using that term to wrap up L&D, HR, and creating the people experience team. Who do you reckon everyone should follow? 5 people.
5 people. Well, I've mentioned some of you already, so I think obviously yourself, Jenny. I think David James, Nick Shackleton-Jones are 2 people that I kind of regularly read and watch on and listen to on LinkedIn. Obviously, that's where they post most of what they do. I don't then have people per se, but what tends to grab my attention is where people are talking about anything human-centered, design related. And at the moment, you don't tend to get a lot of that from the HR space. You kind of have to interpret it more from the kind of the product or the tech space. So if I was on Flipboard, for example, I would be following subjects that are to do with human-centered design, design thinking, employee experience, and I find that those then serve me up content that I wouldn't find otherwise. So that's I really like Flipboard for that reason. That I can go after subjects rather than people. Okay,
cool. So I guess kind of bringing this full circle now, I guess, but if someone was new into the L&D space now and where it's going,
yep.
and I think fundamentally it's more important about where it's going, what 5 tips would you give to them?
5 tips. So, right, give me a second. Okay, well, hopefully the 5th one will come. I think, so if someone was coming into L&D now, so if you were to join my team now, and I've got some people who are quite new in their career in my team, it's a big thing for me around go and talk to, learn from the technology and marketing functions. Those are the functions that have really transformed themselves in the last decade. And they are the functions that are driving the world at the moment. So I think don't look for answers from within HR would be number 1. Number 2, I think, unsurprisingly, learning more about design thinking for problem finding, or human-centered design for problem finding, and agile for problem solving. If you can early in your career not learn the traditional methods, if you could possibly start your career by learning those methods and philosophies, then I think you're probably better set up for success in the future. I think to cultivate and develop the skill of empathy is really, really key. To be talking with people, to be observing them, obviously with the right intentions, to be really passionate about designing or creating solutions that they will value, that they will thank you for, and to be really, really clear that is what your job is about. I think at the moment, becoming really comfortable with data. I think data and analytics are a skill that will become like PC skills of the 90s. We used to actually put on your CV, Danny, you may not have ever done this, but to put on your CV, Word, intermediate, Excel, intermediate, Outlook, advanced, and you used to specify that were your PC skills. I think data and analytics, being able to, it starts with spreadsheets, but obviously people are becoming more skilled in things like Tableau, and being able to tell stories with data, I think is a skill that people should lean into now. And it's hard for HR people, right? Because the reason they usually go into HR is because they love people and helping people, and data feels the opposite of that. But actually, data is what serves you helping people. And I think the fifth one would be just to experiment, right? I think there is no harm in having a hypothesis, building up a kind of MVP, something really like a minimum valuable product, something really basic, and then putting it in front of people and getting their feedback. There is no harm in it. In fact, there's a lot to gain. And so developing this kind of mindset of experimentation, and being a bit braver in trying things, I think will set people up for a much more successful career.
Awesome sound advice. So I guess kind of at the start of the session, I asked you, what you wanted to be when you
when I grow up.
When you grow up, and obviously you of all people know we never really stop growing, and we never really truly grow up. So if I was to ask that question now, Tracey, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you say now?
I guess another way to ask that, if I could do my kind of from uni onwards all over again, I would probably go into marketing. Not because I'm necessarily passionate about selling things or people buying things, but because I find the psychology of marketing really fascinating, and I think marketing has become really sophisticated, and in some cases mostly for the power of good, but sometimes if you look at Facebook and so on, maybe less so. But I would like to just I'll do a completely different career path, and I just want to learn something like from scratch that still has a really strong psychology, like how people tick, what really makes them make decisions, what really drives their behavior, and I'd like to learn a completely different way of actually positively impacting on that.
Cool. So I guess we've got 2 more questions and we are done. I know.
Go.
Okay, next question. So I guess right at the start, I asked you to pick 6 numbers.
Yes.
Okay. Now these 6 numbers tally up to...
So I have to remember what they were. It's like a dementia test. What were those numbers?
Luckily, I've wrote them down.
Good.
So you had number 16, which was a shovel. You had number 44.
Shovel. Hang on. Shovel, yep.
You had number 44, which was a pair of stockings.
Stockings, okay.
You had number 67, which was a hair tie, a bobble.
Hair tie, okay.
And the last one was 88, which was a lace. A shoelace.
A shoelace,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you're on a desert island. What are you doing with these 4 items?
Well, the shovel's going to come in pretty handy, I suspect. I'll probably dig myself a shelter. And then I think the other things I've chosen are quite handy because I could definitely use the stocking as a kind of, because stockings are quite good when you use them as like a rope, not as a stocking. Okay. They're quite good. The hair tie is also good for, to be fair, I always wear my hair up, so I'll probably just use it in my hair. And the shoelace is good, again, so I would dig myself a shelter and I would use the shoelace and the stockings to create a kind of cover that means I can at least protect myself from the elements. Now maybe, I don't know if I could use the shoelace and the stocking for some kind of trap that I could capture. And I know what I could do is I could dig a hole, set a trap so I can not buy myself obviously, but kill myself some dinner. I'd probably have to kill it by strangling it with a stocking. So I think I'm going to be all right on the desert island with those 4 things to begin with anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we instantly went to like an 18 movie there where there was strangulation.
Well, hey, if it comes down to survival, anything goes.
Yeah, this is very true. This is true. So Tracey, where can people find you and keep up to date with what you're up to over at Sky and whatnot?
Sure. So my team have been keeping a pretty amateur blog. Actually, it's been more for our own kind of reflection learning. But on Medium, if you search for Agile in Learning, you'll find a kind of collection of stories that we have reflected on over the last 3 years. A lot to do with our kind of beginnings in Agile, and then more recently with Design Thinking. And I'm on LinkedIn under, I think if you search Tracey Waters Sky, there's only one of me. So that should lead you to me.
Perfect. Well, Tracey, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on.
It has, Danny. It was worth the wait. So yeah. Thank you for being so patient. And I look forward to listening to myself. Not. Hopefully other people find it more enjoyable.
I'm definitely sure they will. Thanks again, Tracey. I appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.